beautiful day, sun was shining. Everyone seemed to be going to the beach. Felt like freedom from all the lockdown we've all been going through. We went into the water. I had a ball that we were playing with, and it landed next to a man. I was like, will you give me my ball back? And he was like, no. Before I could leave him, he started to touch my arm and said, come with me. I was alone now. And the guy started pulling me out to deeper water, and I couldn't feel my feet on the seafloor. It's then he started touching me, and I was telling him no and to get off me. No one could see what was happening. That's when he raped me.
It was extremely traumatic for such a young girl. When the girl told her friends what had happened, they very quickly contacted family members who then reported the matter to Dorset Police, and we started an investigation. She worked really hard to help us in every way that she could, so that we could get the best possible description and all of the details that she was able to help with. It wasn't known if he would try and do something similar again, and therefore there was pressure to get an identification of him as quickly as possible. That was a huge undertaking. The beach was packed with thousands of people from all over the country. It was very, very busy. There were families there for the whole day, and you would expect to be safe. We were told that the man was 17, of mixed race appearance, dark hair, and was wearing grey swimming trunks. They weren't known to each other, they'd had no previous contact, and she heard name Dabby. There was an e-fit that was prepared from the description. He told her he was from the Birmingham area. We liaised with our colleagues in the West Midlands. The e-fit was distributed in their force area. The feeling amongst the investigation team is a sense of outrage that somebody would have come and committed this horrible act on a child. Thousands of hours of CCTV was seized, and trying to identify individuals amongst those crowds, all of whom were wearing beachwear, so it was very difficult, and it was very much like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Whilst investigators scoured through nearby CCTV footage, the forensics team looked into the victim's clothing to recover any evidence.
In these circumstances, particular concern was this act had taken place underwater, so we weren't entirely sure what the seawater, what damage that would have done to any forensic evidence that was present. We were very hopeful that we would get a result, but it was by no means certain.
Despite having been underwater, incredibly, the forensic testing on the swimwear revealed the DNA of a suspect.
This was a major breakthrough. To then discover a full male DNA profile was really exciting. We then loaded that onto the national DNA database, but there were no matches.
A nationwide appeal was launched to find the suspect, and the attack was featured twice on Crime Watch.
On the programme today, police need your help identifying this man after he raped a teenager at Bournemouth Beach on one of the busiest days of the summer.
Crime Watch produced names that had to be researched, and comparison of their DNA very quickly was able to rule them out. We needed to make sure we'd exhausted every possible line of inquiry, including social media. Does anybody reveal something that may help the investigation, help us identify who Dabby may be?
A year after the sexual assault, the suspect was still unidentified. So Dorset Police turned to an advanced forensic DNA technique.
Familial DNA is a process of examining the national DNA database for people who share common characteristics of their DNA with a suspect profile. We're looking looking for people we know haven't committed the offence, but may be related to people who have committed the offence. The threshold for conducting that search is quite high because it's very intrusive. The application needs to be considered by an ethics panel, and once all those levels of approval have been granted, then the forensic service provider conduct a physical search of the database.
When the results came back, police finally got the break they needed.
At the top of the list was one individual who had a very, very close DNA resemblance to the suspect sample. And that made us quite confident that we'd identified a potential family member of our suspect. They appeared to be from the West Midlands area, and we used a number of intelligence gathering techniques to explore their family and visited them, and very quickly we were able to identify the suspect, who was a member of their family. The person that was identified was Gabrielle Marinoka. We were also able to identify mobile telephone numbers and vehicles that were used by the family, and as a result of research on them, we were able to identify that on the day of the offence, his family car travelled from Birmingham to Bournemouth and back again shortly after the offence. There are a number of other things that fell into place. Gabrielle, a shortened version of that is Gabby. That could very easily be misheard as Dabby. He was arrested for the offence of rape, brought back to Dorset and interviewed under caution. And when his DNA came back as a match, we had scientific evidence that proved that he was the person responsible. He is the one that engineered the circumstances. She did nothing wrong. He had deliberately ushered her out of her depth. He was much taller than her, and she could not touch the bottom, which gave him immense power over her. He was between her and the beach, so she could see all of the people on the beach and in the water. She could see safety. He covered her mouth so that she couldn't cry out. It must have been an absolutely terrifying ordeal for her.
Gabrielle Marinoka was charged with rape and sexual assault. On the 11th of March 2024, almost 3 years after the attack, the case went to trial.
The period just before a verdict is very nerve-wracking, particularly when the jury come in and you know that they have a verdict, but you don't know what it is.
He was found guilty and sentenced to 6 years in prison and put on the sex offenders register for life.
The victim is never very far from our thoughts, and this whole investigation was about obtaining justice for her and bringing somebody who'd committed a horrible act to justice to prevent them doing it to anybody else.
The date will never pass without me being taken back to the 15-year-old in the sea. I feel mentally drained. I want to try and enjoy my life as I should, but during the day my mind wanders, and I'm left with the image of him in my mind. What happened will never not be a part of my childhood.